he's doing well on the stand. He's answering the questions, and I'm buying pretty much everything he's putting down.
Yeah, me too. You know, it's nice when the prosecutor has someone like that to give like a little preview and like these communications. And he's not one of the murderers, too. You know, it's like there's a saying, he who calls the defendant or calls the co-defendant loses. It's always baggage when prosecutors call co-defendants because there's implied sort of motivation there. Like he's already said, I pled guilty, I'm getting a 10. And he's probably getting something for his testimony or already had. But with this particular situation, he's not one of the ones in the house killing the victim. So it brings a nice sort of perspective for the prosecutor when you have somebody that has insight into the two co-defendants.
No matter who pulled the trigger, and I guess, you know, that may be still up in the air, he's the guy who's sort of the force behind all this.
Absolutely, Michael, right? Because we talked about that in the first segment as to how's the prosecutor going to tie this particular defendant in. You know, they have been separated, obviously, and there's one defendant in the chair. Now, sometimes that's problematic for the prosecutor because when you separate them like this, they can easily point the finger at each other. So the prosecutor's trying to use every witness, every piece of evidence that they can to try to give a vantage point that this defendant is the primary defendant when it goes time to ask them to bring that murder conviction back in the jury room.
So do you think that that's where the defense will go? That's the most likely thing. There's really not much else I can think of here is that, you know, if he can get off with something lesser or maybe curry some sympathy with the jury and say, look, it wasn't me, it was her. She was the one that was having a beef. Grandma was beating her as far as I saw. She was protecting herself, and I was helping her along to get away, but that's all I was doing. Where does that get him if that, in fact, is the argument that he makes?
Yeah, it does. In essence, I mean, look, we already talked about the voluntary intoxication does not rise to the level of defense. So where does that leave him? It leaves him pointing the finger at her. Now, the only way to get out of that, though, Michael, and we've talked about this before, is that you have to have the shared intent for a conspiracy or accomplice principle sort of liability. So if he goes in there with her thinking that they're going to steal property, which obviously they did. They went into the safe. They went into the purse. They left the place ransacked. If he could show the jury that that was the only reason he went in and all of a sudden, boom, boom, gun goes off and it was her, then that would be a not guilty on the murder.